On this month's In the Life,
sexual intimacy is illegal.
On the outskirts of the law,
we have to plead our case.
In Puerto Rico,
a legislator accused her of being a lesbian and said that she could be arrested.
After 9/11,
they were sorry about the loss of my friend.
And in straight America,
who the hell was guiding them strollers, chasing them toddlers, pushing them swings?
Slam poet Emanual Xavier hosts Family Law, America's gay and lesbian news magazine, In the Life.
Well, let's change the law.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation. Additional support provided by the Ford Foundation, the Gill Foundation, the Pride Foundation, the Collingwood Foundation, the Rainbow Endowment, Michael A. Levin, and the annual support of In the Life members like you.
Liberty presumes an autonomy of self that includes freedom of thought, belief, expression, and certain intimate conduct. On June 26, 2003, the Supreme Court of the United States found that homosexuals hold those rights too. In Lawrence versus Texas, Justice Kennedy used those words to abolish all sodomy laws in the United States and its territories. By criminalizing gay men and lesbians, these laws created a foundation for countless other discriminations. And with this watershed ruling, that foundation is gone. I'm Emanual Xavier, and tonight on In the Life, Family Law. Loving spouses, legal strangers.
Unfortunately, you're not married in the eyes of California.
Children at risk in Florida.
The kids in the real world are sort of up for grabs.
And nowhere to run.
He connected and hit me in the face and broke my cheekbone.
With the Lawrence decision, the Supreme Court overturned laws still on the books in 13 states that branded gay men and lesbians sex offenders. Across America, our communities have long defied that indictment. In the late 90s, Margarita Sanchez challenged the sodomy laws of Puerto Rico, working within her political system and her religion to fight the law that made her a criminal in her own country.
Yo soy Margarita Sanchez de León. Pertenezco a la...
I am Margarita Sanchez de León. I belong to the Universal Fraternity of the Metropolitan Community Church. This church was founded 30 years ago in the United States, and it's the first American church to be open to the gay and lesbian community.
Margarita has been a leader in the civil rights community and human rights community in Puerto Rico for many years, working not just on lesbian and gay rights issues, but on all kinds of social justice issues, on peace issues, economic equality.
In 1997, the House of Representatives was presented with a project that became known as the Project Against Gay Marriage.
Margarita was testifying before the legislature in Puerto Rico. She was testifying in opposition to a bill that would prohibit gays and lesbians from marrying.
When it was time for me to testify, along with other religious leaders against the project, I was the only person who was asked about her sexual orientation.
She was basically, verbally attacked by a legislator who accused her of being a lesbian and said that she was in violation of Puerto Rico's sodomy statute, and as a result, she could be arrested. I think many people would have been scared and intimidated and silenced by that, and her reaction was exactly the opposite, which was to decide to take on that law and to do everything she could to remove that law so that people could no longer use it against her and other gays and lesbians.
In November of 1997, we went to the Department of Justice to openly confess that we were in violation of Article 103, to see what the state would do. We were ready to go to jail for those violations, because even though we understood it was a law, it was an unfair law.
Porque entendíamos que aunque fuese una ley, es una ley injusta.
Article 103, which is Puerto Rico's sodomy statute, uses very antiquated language. It makes it a crime for anybody in Puerto Rico to engage in what the law calls the crime against nature, which legally we understand to mean anal sex. In addition, it prohibits gays and lesbians from engaging in any kind of sexual intimacy whatsoever. It's a felony, and the punishment is up to 10 years in prison.
Bueno, esta demanda
This lawsuit hasn't upset me very much personally.
muy poco. En el caso de mi compañera,
It has, however, affected my partner, particularly because of the public exposure associated with the lawsuit. Even though her name doesn't appear on the lawsuit, obviously she's been exposed. She's been put in a difficult position because her family, contrary to mine, has not been open to her sexual orientation nor to our relationship.
ni hacia nuestra relación. Expresión a las 5 es un esfuerzo que surge en el 1990.
Last year, we started a demonstration called Expression at 5. We started it on the 29th of January, 1999, which is the International Day of Nonviolence and Peace. That day is also the anniversary of the death of Mahatma K. Gandhi. In this context of nonviolence and peace, we have this activity every Friday in front of the Capitol building. In these demonstrations, we condemn homophobia in Puerto Rico, in our society, and within its structures, whether social or cultural.
Todas nuestras estructuras, en todas las expresiones sociales y culturales, y además también denunciar otras exclusiones sociales. Aunque la homofobia es la exclusión.
Even though we concentrate on homophobia, we understand that all social exclusions have the same roots.
Sociales tienen una misma raíz.
We are a group that has suffered a lot of invisibility. This is a way to tell society, especially to those who rule our country, that we exist, that we are citizens, that we have rights, and that we should be heard.
My faith has led me to believe that it's very important to get involved and to work on social issues. But my faith did come first.
Como fiel seguidora y creyente de Jesús, entiendo que Jesús fue una.
As a strong follower of Jesus, I believe that Jesus stood for and fought for the welfare of people. Jesus didn't only preach for people to repent. He would feed people, he would heal people, and he would denounce situations in their social context.
No se ha sentido solo o sola.
In 1960, every state in this country had a sodomy statute on the books. Today, of course, only 17 states have sodomy statutes on the books. And those laws, the laws that have been eliminated by legislatures which have repealed them, and some of them have been eliminated by lawsuits like this one.
Básicamente, este artículo impacta.
Basically, Article 103 impacts the gay community in the following manner. It makes our conduct and our lives a crime. And making the gay and lesbian segment of the population illegal has very serious consequences.
There was a case that was decided last year by the Court of Appeals in Puerto Rico. The case involved two gay men who were a couple. One of the men assaulted the other man, and the district attorney's office went to prosecute the man who was guilty of engaging in domestic violence, and the court ruled that the laws that prohibit domestic violence in Puerto Rico can't be used to protect gay people in relationships. Those relationships aren't entitled to protection because under Puerto Rico's sodomy statute, the sexual intimacy that those relationships involve is illegal.
As gays and lesbians, we have felt the impact of these views on our personal lives. This is perhaps what informs our decision to take on these social issues and these political actions. It's that we can personally identify with oppression. I guess we can say that it's in light of the discrimination against us that we forge our ideals.
Puerto Rico's Article 103, like all sodomy laws then on the books, was overturned by Lawrence versus Texas. Margarita Sanchez is no longer a felon in the eyes of her country. Though the Supreme Court decriminalized the lives of gays and lesbians, the ruling doesn't extend equal protection to our relationships. We are out of the closet and safe in the bedroom, but only in the bedroom. So for now, we must continue to struggle for the rights that our government denies us, even in the face of tragedy.
The morning of September 11th started just like any other ordinary day. We got up at our usual time, had breakfast. Tony was ready to go around about 8:30, and I guess it was probably about 8:33 that, I gave him a hug, kissed him, told him I loved him, and said goodbye, and he gave me a kiss and told me he loved me and said goodbye. And he walked out the door.
He was in the concourse having coffee, his second cup of coffee for the morning. He felt the first tower get hit and went back upstairs to Tower 2 to begin the evacuation process. So his security team, which is 6 of them, they got 3,700 Morgan Stanley employees out of the building unharmed before the second plane hit their tower. And then he went back in Tower 2 along with the firemen to make sure everyone was out. And that's when Tower 2 collapsed. So I know that he was in the building when the tower collapsed. And unfortunately, all that news came to me on that Friday, September 14th, which was our 26th anniversary.
Morning of September 11th started as usual. We had a running joke, but I always meant it for traffic. And I said every morning, don't let the bastards get you. But that day they got her. I had heard on the television that first plane had gone into the World Trade Center. And then the second plane went in. And I called her at the Pentagon because they don't always get transmissions. And so we talked about it. And she decided that, yeah, the world was a little crazy. Said, I'll see you tonight. And I didn't, and she didn't come home.
Peggy Neff and Sheila Hine shared a life together for almost 18 years. 7 years ago, they bought a house in Hyattsville, Maryland, and in 1995, they prepared wills that left all their possessions to each other. Peggy had just gotten her real estate license and was set to embark on a new career. But instead of facing a future with Sheila, Peggy was suddenly alone and without the safety net that would have been provided to a married couple.
Immediately after the attacks, the country came together and contributed to help the victims of the attacks, large relief organizations like the Red Cross. Because there are no legal connections to our relationships, we were afraid that some of these agencies would not treat gay people fairly and equally in distributing these relief funds.
This poor woman who met me first said, "Who have you lost?" I said, "I've lost my partner." And she immediately said, "What's her name?" I said, "No, I lost my partner." And she said, "Oh, what was she called?" I said, "I'm a gay man." And she was very embarrassed. But that's just an indication she was not attuned to the fact that gay people were suffering along with heterosexuals in this tragic event.
Even those charities and relief agencies that have been officially welcoming, we've had to work with them to get them to train their people and make sure everyone understands what that policy is.
While many agencies open their doors to gay and lesbian families, providing much-needed short-term relief for things like mortgage or rent payments, many kinds of long-term assistance will not be accessible to same-sex partners.
Marriage brings all of these rights and protections to a couple. When a person who is married died, their spouse has all kinds of automatic protections to inherit the vast majority of the individual's estate, the ability to bring a lawsuit to sue anybody who might have been responsible for that death. Those are the two really important ones.
Advocacy groups like the Empire State Pride Agenda were instrumental in getting New York Governor George Pataki to issue an executive order granting the surviving partners of gay victims equal benefits from the state's Crime Victims Board.
Tomorrow, I'm signing an executive order changing that functioning of the Crime Victims Board so that gay and lesbian couples will not undergo that type of discrimination.
Unfortunately for Peggy Neff, Governor Jim Gilmore of Virginia was not as sympathetic.
I got a very nice letter back from them saying they were terribly sorry about the loss of my friend. But according to laws of descent, that they could only give to blood relatives or spouse. And obviously I didn't fit their criteria, therefore they were terribly sorry.
Realizing the many inequities facing gays and lesbians affected by 9/11, the Empire State Pride Agenda, Lambda Legal Defense and Education Fund, the Gay and Lesbian Anti-Violence Project, and the Stonewall Community Foundation in New York, with help from the Human Rights Campaign in Washington, D.C., pooled their resources and created the September 11th Gay and Lesbian Family Fund.
We started receiving calls here at the Anti-Violence Project. People at Lambda also started receiving calls, and people at the Human Rights Campaign as well as the Empire State Pride Agenda were all receiving calls from people who wanted to do something specifically for lesbian and gay victims. So money, unsolicited, started coming, and before we knew it, there was about $190,000 that had been raised.
The Gay and Lesbian Family Fund dispersed its monies equally between all families whose applications were approved. Peggy Neff, John Winter, and William Randolph each received an initial check for $4,000.
The gifts that we can give can in no way make up for what they won't be getting from workers' compensation or from pension funds that spouses will automatically be entitled to, which is, can be upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it really is a symbolic gesture on the part of the community to say to these people that we feel for you, we care about you, and we recognize that this was a committed relationship and a family.
Tony didn't have a will, and all of his life insurance and his workers' compensation all went into his estate, which his sister was the executive of. So I got nothing in that area at all. And while they tried to be as helpful as they could, there's a certain limit to what they can do.
Wesley had a birthday August 31st. He turned 70 and was getting ready to retire the end of 2001. So he found that as part of the sort of retirement process. Now that I'm not working, I can sort of focus on this will thing. So we had talked about it.
But less than 2 weeks later, Wesley was gone. Without wills, both William and John are considered legal strangers to their late partners and will most likely be ineligible for the federal government's September 11th Victims' Compensation Fund.
We're pretty sure that gay families that had wills, where both partners had wills and named the other as the executor and beneficiary, and a biological family member is not contesting, we're pretty sure those people will be okay and be able to apply and receive funding. We're much more concerned about those families that did not have wills. Obviously, many, many young people died, and just, when you're 20, 30, 40 years old, you just don't think of wills.
Because we had wills, what I will be doing is filing as personal representative for her estate when I file for the Federal Compensation Fund, and consequently, yes, I will keep the house. I will keep the house also because Sheila's mother, thank God, likes me. She considered us a real couple and has offered all of the help that she can give also if I need it.
These federal funds, the average check they're predicting will be $1.6 million. That would go to a spouse automatically. For us, It's up in the air. We have to plead our case. We don't know who that money will go to.
State relief allowed William Randolph to remain in his home, but John Winter was unable to prove his partnership and was forced to move out. Because she did have proper documentation and Sheila's mother did not contest her claim, Peggy Neff was awarded over $500,000 from the Federal Victim Compensation Fund.
As recently as 1990, only 41 cities and counties had laws banning workplace discrimination based on sexual orientation. In the decades since then, that number has tripled, raising the total to over 120. I'm Staceyann Chin, and you're watching In the Life.
Mr. Noel, you have been charged with involuntary manslaughter of Diane Whipple.
My dog went nuts.
I'm in shock. We're all in shock right now. The jury find the defendant, Marjorie Knoller, guilty.
It was a story that shocked the country. But for Sharon Smith, it was more than just a news headline. It was an event that took away her spouse. For Sharon and Diane, their relationship began the night they met in Southern California in 1994.
It was just energy as soon as I met her. It was just, there was kind of instant energy there.
They spent the next 7 years creating a life together. When Sharon's job took them to San Francisco, they chose a neighborhood overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge called Pacific Heights.
You know, we had dreams and, we were making plans.
Those plans were shattered on January 26, 2001.
The day it happened, it was a Friday.
Diane was bringing groceries into the house, and her neighbor down the corridor in the apartment building, Marjorie Knoller, was walking two Presa Canario dogs.
One of the dogs lunged at Diane.
And they literally went after her, and unfortunately, they got to her and took out a good portion of her throat.
As I approach the block where we live, there was 2 ambulances. I look ahead and I see my landlord. And I run up to her, and she looks at me, white as a ghost, and she said, "Oh my God, she got bit." We get to the hospital, we're in the emergency room, and they sit me down. When the surgeon is telling me, "You need to focus." And that's when he said that she'd lost almost all her blood in the hallway. And then I see her, and it wasn't her. They pretty much covered her up for me, and except for her face. And there was just so much damage. It didn't even register it was her.
Diane Alexis Whipple passed away later that night, and Sharon's nightmare got even uglier as the dog's owners began speaking to the media.
I had no knowledge that he would do anything like that. I mean, how can you prevent something you don't know is going to happen?
Sharon went to see an attorney, Michael Cordoza, hoping to get help sending the dog's owners to jail. What she didn't understand was that the victim has very little say in a criminal prosecution, but there was another alternative.
And I said, Sharon, when one spouse loses another spouse in a negligent situation, the other spouse can sue for wrongful death. It's like a monetary apology from the person who caused the negligence.
I thought, okay, well, that sounds good. This is my way of feeling like I'm going to hold them accountable.
But unfortunately, you're not married in the eyes of California.
And that's when I said to him, well, what do I need to do? He said, well, you'd have to change the law. I said, okay, well, let's change the law.
The criminal case was about justice for Diane. The civil case is about justice for the relationship between Sharon and Diane.
As the dog's owners went on trial for Diane's death, Sharon and her lawyer went forward with the civil case, a wrongful death lawsuit. They asked the National Center for Lesbian Rights to come on as co-counsel.
Up until Sharon's case, never in this country had a same-sex surviving spouse been able to sue for wrongful death.
Creation of a domestic partnership is the closest that a gay or lesbian couple can come to approximating the status of marriage.
Without showing that Diane was her life partner, Sharon could not even begin her case.
The thing that was helpful for Sharon Smith was that at least she had a will that was created by her now lost partner that said, this is the person I want to have get everything. And that was at least enough to get her through the courthouse door.
Not only did Diane leave a will, but Sharon had registered her as a domestic partner for work benefits. This proved their status as domestic partners, but still did not ensure them the same rights as married couples.
In the absence of wills and so forth, the relationship is simply not recognizable. It's presumed to be a casual relationship, and you are considered to be what's called legal strangers.
The dog's owners asked the court to throw the case out on the grounds that a lesbian partner has no right to bring a wrongful death claim. But the judge refused to dismiss the case. He ruled that under the state constitution, Sharon was Diane's spouse. It was a landmark legal ruling.
The judge expanded the definition of spouse in California. He said spouse means same-sex spouse.
This case is for the first time recognizing a domestic partner as a family member who has a right to recompense for her loss.
That was the first victory. The next goal was to change the law so that every gay couple in California would have this same right. Fortunately, openly lesbian Assemblywoman Carol Migden was already sponsoring a bill in the state legislature to protect domestic partnerships. It was called AB 25.
This was a bill that was vetoed in 1998. It came up in 99. It came up in 2000.
When it came up again in 2001, Assemblywoman Migden asked for Sharon's help.
She came to Sacramento and testified on behalf of the bill and, helped put a face on a horrific, tragic circumstance to let dignity to the proceeding.
AB 25 passed, and in January 2002, it became law in California. But not every couple has paperwork that can help them fight for the relationship.
In the absence of any paperwork, you have as much legal right as if your roommate or your best friend died.
It takes several documents to help protect a domestic partnership.
The most basic and obvious are wills, powers of attorney, healthcare proxies, having both people shown on a lease if they live in an apartment or on the deed if they both own a home.
If a tragedy hits, these documents may be the only way to preserve a partner's rights. In Sharon's case, they made it possible for her to carry out Diane's legacy.
I have forced myself to stay focused on what is this all about? And it's all about her.
Still to come on In the Life, when abuse hits home.
The incidence of domestic violence in the queer community is parallel to the incidence of domestic violence in the straight community.
NYPD Blue turns a new shade of pink.
To be like, you are the gay character representing all gay people is absurd, and I would never want to take that on.
And Harvey asked the burning question of our time.
Are heterosexuals obsolete?
Hallo, mein Name ist Klaus Wowereit. Ich bin der regierende Bürgermeister von Berlin. Und Sie sehen jetzt In the Life.
Without legal recognition of our relationships, we cannot defend our partners, and we can't always protect our children. In Florida, the law even denies certain children the right to a stable home.
Rosie O'Donnell outed herself on national television to draw attention to a Florida law that prohibits gays and lesbians from adopting children. Rosie, who has dual residency in New York and Miami, has created a family with her partner, Kelly Carpenter, and their 3 adopted children. But recently, Rosie faced a harsh reality. Under Florida law, she can never adopt the child she once fostered because she's gay.
I don't think America knows what a gay parent looks like. I am the gay parent.
While Rosie O'Donnell's activism will likely help the movement to change Florida's anti-gay law, Florida's growing population of gay families has been suffering silently. The reason is a 25-year-old law that singles out gays and lesbians. It reads, quote, "No person who is otherwise eligible under this statute can adopt if he or she is a homosexual."
Sexuality is not a precursor to good parenting.
In 1997, a county judge refused to rule the ban unconstitutional, and in 1999, the ACLU filed the first federal civil lawsuit on behalf of foster parents Steve Lofton and Roger Croteau. It was thrown out of court and is now on appeal.
Florida's ban on adoption by lesbians and gay men violates the guaranteed equal protection under the law of the United States Constitution. The law targets lesbians and gay men and no one else, singles them out for exclusion from adoption despite the fact that there's no reason to believe that lesbians and gay men can't be and aren't good parents.
Ironically, the state allows gays and lesbians to become certified foster parents. They simply can't legally adopt the foster children they have nurtured. The ACLU's case against the state involves 3 plaintiffs, all who charge that the law is unconstitutional. These families stand to lose children they've fostered since birth, and all of the plaintiffs are facing the reality that they can never create the kind of long-term stability for these children adoption can provide. Steve Lofton and Roger Croteau, partners for more than 17 years, stand to lose 11-year-old Bert, a child who has been with them since birth. He was born HIV positive, as were the rest of their foster kids. But now that Bert is HIV negative, the state says it wants to find him a permanent heterosexual home. The law dates back to 1977, when entertainer Anita Bryant spearheaded an anti-gay crusade. Her movement was successful, and the Florida legislature passed the law by a sweeping margin.
Nobody knew who was gay or lesbian at the time. No one was out. This was 1977, 25 years ago, and it was a completely different environment.
Elaine Bloom, a conservative Democrat, was one of those legislators who voted in favor of the ban, a vote she now regrets.
I had to go back, search through all my old House journals, and it's there, you know, once you see the record. I think it was May 31st, 1977. So I did it, and I'm sorry.
Elaine has personally set out to convince her fellow legislators to admit they made a mistake too, and stand behind repealing the law.
I talked to some of my former colleagues and said, we have an opportunity to at least go public with our own views now. Do you agree to a statement that says in 1977 we made a mistake on this particular vote because it denied children the opportunity for loving, supportive families?
Elaine didn't know it then, but her son David was gay, and she had just enacted a law that could affect him years later.
I feel remiss is that I have never discussed with my mother that bill in 1977. I never asked her how she voted.
David and his partner had their son when they lived in New York. They recently moved to Florida, where the adoption ban has no effect on them, but it does on other gays and lesbians raising kids in Florida. Wayne LaRue Smith and Dan Scahan are also plaintiffs in the ACLU lawsuit. They've been together for nearly 10 years and live in Florida's Key West. For the past 3 years, they've opened their doors to the state's foster children. They also charge that the law is unconstitutional and labels them unfit parents.
We saw 11 children through our house now in the foster care system, and each of them had their own individual problems of neglect, abuse, or abandonment that we had to deal with. And bringing those kids around is one of the most difficult jobs I've ever encountered.
Wayne and Dan are currently taking care of 2 little boys, whose identities we have to protect.
The toughest part is learning what they've been through that brought them here.
Our main goal with our children is providing them safety in our home. This is their safe place. They don't have to fear anything when they're here.
My greatest hope is to have just made a difference, no matter how small or how large, in their lives.
The American Psychological Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the Child Welfare League disagree with those who say homosexuals shouldn't be allowed to adopt.
What the state of Florida truly is saying is that people who are gay or lesbian or bisexual are wonderful people to take care of foster children who have no other place to be placed, and yet you can't place them for permanent adoption. It doesn't make any sense.
There are currently more than 3,400 kids waiting to be adopted in the state of Florida. Right now, 400 of them are being raised in gay or lesbian foster homes, and given the chance, the majority would adopt the children they are fostering.
If the gay adoption ban is repealed, the hopeful byproduct would be that you'd have more people seeking to adopt children.
It was here, at Florida's Gladstone Center in South Miami, a safe haven for abused girls, where Rosie was inspired to become a licensed foster parent.
She was so moved by the place, and she was so moved by the mission of caring and the high level of quality that the kids receive here that she wanted to become more involved.
That meant getting licensed to foster children in the state of Florida. And nowhere on that application does it ask the question, are you a homosexual?
I call it the big don't ask, don't tell conspiracy.
The impact of Florida's anti-gay adoption law reaches far beyond foster parenting. It also prevents gay and lesbian couples the right to seek second-parent adoptions. Robin Singer and Zibby Giardina of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, together for more than 13 years, decided to have their own children. Robin is the biological parent through donor insemination.
The issue becomes, obviously, if God forbid something happens to me, the kids, really in the real world are sort of up for grabs. Legally, she has no right, it's out of our hands. I mean, morally, there are children in our hearts, in our family, and nobody can change that, irrespective of what the laws may or may not say.
They call me Mom Z, I'm Mom Z. They're as much my children as they are Robin's children.
I chose to give them Zibby's last name because it was the only piece that I could give her to connect, the puzzle pieces.
Zibby did try to obtain legal guardianship of her children, but was advised that it would be a long and costly court battle, one that she would never win.
I have no ground to stand on at all in this state, in the state of Florida.
The Florida law prevents these second-parent adoptions from taking place and means that children who otherwise could benefit from having two legally responsible parents only can have one.
But there are ways around the Florida law. When Naomi Parker adopted her daughter, Jamera, from the state of New Jersey, she found a loophole.
Because Jamera's legal place of birth and residence was in the state of New Jersey, Florida couldn't do anything about it. So it was more of a slam dunk in the state of Florida's face.
Jamera was a crack baby, and at 22 months, she had already been in 5 foster homes. Today, she is a thriving 9-year-old. Naomi and her partner Susan are also caring for Naomi's biological daughter, Bria. They are not only fighting for the day they can give Jamera the benefits of 2 legal parents, they are fighting for the rights of all gays and lesbians who want to create families without having to circumvent the law. In the meantime, they try not to worry about the underlying threat the law poses to Jamera's safety.
I wish the law will change, and so it will protect me and my sister.
I agree with Bria that I would hope to see the law change to myself to protect me and my sister and our family.
The ACLU took on the Florida adoption ban in federal appeals court in March of 2003, but as of press time, the adoption ban remains in place. Existing outside of the law means gays and lesbians lose its basic protections and live inside systems that do not know how to include us or our relationships. Gays and lesbians navigate one set of obstacles when these systems cannot deal with same-sex spouses. And we hit still other obstacles if we are faced with same-sex spousal abuse.
When the subject of domestic violence is addressed, the image that typically comes to mind is a woman abused by her husband or boyfriend. But according to statistics, domestic violence occurs just as frequently in same-sex relationships as in heterosexual couples. And in both cases, the numbers are alarming. It's an issue that the gay and lesbian community has been slow to respond to. But anti-violence groups consider domestic violence to be a serious health problem and are working with victims to bring this closeted issue out into the open. We spoke to 2 gay men who have been victims of physical abuse. One of them, still fearing for his safety, would not be identified on camera.
There's a big sense of shame because of being a gay man who should be able to protect himself.
We met and fell in love. Everything felt right. He had many qualities that I really admired.
Everything happened so fast. From the very beginning, I lost control of my identity, of who I was.
He was trying to come out to his family. There was a lot of difficult phone calls, followed by a lot of drinking.
First it was just threats, and then it became slaps and kicks.
He became violent, and I was trying to deflect and talk him down, basically, and he connected and hit me in the face and broke my cheekbone.
And he chased me down and basically got a hold of me, my throat, and wouldn't let go. And I pushed him off, and I threatened to call the police, and he said that if I did, he would kill me.
I needed help, and I came to the Fenway Violence Recovery Program, not quite sure knowing what I would get.
The Violence Recovery Program at Fenway Community Health, we serve people who identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender. And our domestic violence services include short-term counseling. We do support and safety planning. We do advocacy, which can include police advocacy, helping people to deal with police and report crimes to the police. We also do court advocacy, which can include going to court with people and helping them talk to the judge.
As more gay people come forward with their stories of domestic abuse, organizations like New York's Anti-Violence Project are working to draw awareness to the problem.
At the Anti-Violence Project, we define domestic violence as any pattern of behavior which coerces, dominates, or isolates. It's the exertion of any form of power which maintains control within an intimate relationship.
In 1999, the Anti-Violence Project found that of reported cases among same-sex couples, 56% of abuse victims were men and 42% were women.
What we do know from the limited research that has been done is that the incidence of domestic violence in the queer community is parallel to the incidence of domestic violence in the straight community. And that number varies depending on the study between 1/4 and 1/3 of all relationships.
Domestic violence happens within lesbian, gay, transgender, and bisexual relationships similarly but also differently from heterosexual relationships.
Getting the legal system and service providers to understand the dynamics of same-sex relationships is one challenge facing organizations like the Anti-Violence Project and the Fenway Community Center.
Unfortunately, most of those resources are not specifically designed to assist lesbian, bisexual, and transgender women. However, at the very least, they will open the door for a woman. They see a man coming down the walk, they identify him immediately as the enemy, and they don't even stop to think, have we let a woman in who's an abuser? And have we shut a man out who might be a victim?
But there are increasing examples of traditional service organizations responding to the needs of gay people who are seeking help. To better serve the gay community in Dallas, the Gay and Lesbian Center is working with a domestic violence program to create a shelter for gay men, one of the first of its kind in the country.
We were contacted by the center and just began a dialogue about domestic violence. And their concern or interest was what resources might be put together for gay men who are in a situation with domestic violence, because there was no facility to shelter them.
Good afternoon, Dallas Gay and Lesbian Community Center.
We, on average, were getting, I'd say, at least one call every 2 weeks of someone trying to find out about domestic violence, where it could be done, where could they go, what services were out there.
As gay organizations strive to educate mainstream institutions, they are also working to get the gay community to look within and acknowledge that domestic violence is a serious problem that needs to be addressed.
There's often this feeling that we need to protect our community and we need to not air the dirty laundry, and we need to not give more fodder for the antis out there. The people that the Fred Phelpses out there, the people that are going to say, all those relationships are dysfunctional, and here's our proof that, they beat each other up all the time, and we don't want to show them that that happens. And so what happens is then it forces the issue into the closet.
The truth of the matter is we are not making progress if in our own communities and in our own homes we're not creating safe spaces for our relationships to exist in healthful ways.
As our neighbors get to know us, as we become visible, everyday people, we slowly take on mainstream civil rights. On television screens across America, NYPD Blue's Bill Brochtrup is steadily changing the hearts of the squad and of the audience.
Action!
Actor Bill Brochtrup plays John Irvin, the very efficient 15th Squad secretary in the television series NYPD Blue. During the filming of an episode on location in New York, John Irvin got the rare opportunity to be seen outside of the precinct, even if it didn't turn out quite the way he had hoped.
When you're the secretary, you're kind of at that desk. So I spend a lot of time at the desk, and any opportunity I have to go outside, I'm pretty psyched. So I had a great time today, driving around in the little Mercedes convertible.
Bill Brochtrup's portrayal of the openly gay and eccentric secretary endeared him to the show's audience. He has now become one of the most popular cast members, and viewers tune eagerly to follow the unusual relationship that has developed between his character and that of often cranky and homophobic Sipowicz.
It's taken literally years for the two of us to become kind of friends now. And at the end of the first season, it was a huge thing for him. He shook my hand. And a couple seasons later, when his wife died, he hugged me. And that was a big deal. And then a couple seasons later, I'm babysitting his son. And that was a huge thing for him. And this last season, something that kind of blew me away, I never thought we'd see happen, is that John went to Sipowicz for romantic advice. You know, I went to him with boyfriend problems. And, you know, of all the people in the world, all the people in that squad, Sipowicz. In a way, I feel like John is a little bit of a, an emissary from the gay community to people who don't think they know any gay people. Maybe they see John and maybe they go, hey, that guy's pretty nice. He's good at his job and he's a friendly guy. And when they see Sipowicz being mean to me or something, I think their reaction is, well, that's not very nice. So I think that maybe that can help sort of shift some attitudes in some areas that are not easy to reach.
Okay, here we go. Project! Oh my God!
One of the challenges that Bill Brochtrup had to face, though, was how to deal with being gay in the entertainment industry.
The more difficult thing for me, as far as NYPD Blue goes, was what to do once I started the show and started having to do, interviews and talking to, magazines and newspapers and things. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do about it. I mean, I had all the fears that everybody talks about, oh my God, my career will be ruined, I'll never get another job. I spent about the first 2 months of doing interviews sort of saying, oh, I don't want to talk about my personal life, I don't talk about my personal life. And I felt like a schmuck. I went to Catholic school, there were sins of commission and sins of omission, and that's a sin of omission where you just sort of try not to say. And I didn't feel comfortable with that. So I started talking about it in the press, and what's been amazing is there's been no fallout as far as I can see. I don't ever have to be worried about, oh my God, are they going to ask me that? Here it comes, the gay question's coming, it's coming. Dodge, I'm much happier this way. Okay, you know what, I won't. Don't tell him I won't. It'll be fine. He'll do it and I won't say. I try to say that, can I help you? So that every time I'll just keep
Some people in the community are concerned with John Irvin's sissy-ish image, but Bill believes the television landscape has evolved enough that there's room today for a greater variety of gay characters.
The thing that makes me the happiest is that there are now a number of gay characters on TV, so that not one guy has to be representing the gay community, which is insane and obviously can't be done. The men and women in the gay community are, as diverse as every population in the world. So to be like, you are the gay character representing all gay people is absurd, and I would never want to take that on. Here's the part where I ask if that was good.
You were on that go, we gotta go.
Typecasting and sort of being put in a box is endemic to all actors. So yeah, when there's a gay character comes up in a movie or a show or something, my agent usually gets a call. That's fine, if the thing is good. If it's bad, that's another thing. But I would never turn down a gay part that was well written as this is, and as well written as the other things I've done are. I'm hoping that as more and more writers are free to talk about gay topics and it opens the door to all kinds of new relationships and things we haven't seen before, that they'll keep writing these characters and these parts, and if I end up playing them all my life, I'll be fine with that. I've got no problem with that.
Next month on In the Light, the 5th anniversary of Matthew Shepard's murder.
We are a growing community. Parents who've lost their children to hate crime murder.
A Pentecostal church wants to scare the hell out of you.
This is Steve. He thought his homosexual lifestyle was everything a real man could want. Please, Steve, give your life to Jesus.
And our community's least visible minority.
Women's bodies are subject to a lot of policing, and so if you're saying you're a queer woman, you're right there, you're saying, this is my body.
And finally, when gays and lesbians go mainstream, what happens to everyone else? In Outtakes, Harvey Fierstein worries over straight America.
So what happened was, these words are making me nervous. What happened was, you're in my key light. Well, so far that's not offensive. Come on, Papa, what do you say? On a perfect spring day, I made a pilgrimage to the neighborhood of my youth, Park Slope, Brooklyn, New York. It had always been a family-friendly area. Tree-lined avenues choked with bustling school-bound kids, mommies guiding strollers, daddies chasing toddlers, nannies pushing swings. 20 years had not changed a thing, except who the hell was guiding them strollers, chasing them toddlers, pushing them swings? It was us, lesbians and gay males, parenting as far as the eye could see. I began to worry. Well, not about the new breeding role of homosexuals, but about usurping the usefulness of straights. I mean, now that we procreate with ease, are heterosexuals obsolete? Years ago, sociobiologist Edward O. Wilson put forth his theory that homosexuals are absolutely necessary for the survival of the species. He held that if homosexuality were not, it surely would have been bred out millions of years ago via natural selection. So why are we here? We are the teachers who can stay late after school to aid slower students. We're the maiden aunts and bachelor uncles who provide financial cushioning in case of emergencies. We are, in his view, the worker bees of humanity. In a more recent book, The Soul Beneath the Skin, David Nimmons holds that we are a superior society altogether. We are, he asserts, the social and moral leaders of humanity. Using the AIDS crisis as backdrop, he sets out to illustrate that we are more nurturing, altruistic, nonviolent, and even in the face of death, fun-loving. Gays and lesbians are more open-minded and more available for intimate relationships, not only with partners, but also with family and friends. Our volunteerism alone elevates us high above straight society. W has no need to beg us to do our part. There is certainly no argument against our claim as artistic and cultural leaders of humanity. Without us, heterosexual wardrobes would break down into two major categories: fig leaves and grape leaves. All anyone needs to is take a look at the art, architecture, and home furnishing trends from the mid-'80s through the late '90s. You will find evidenced a vast black hole of invention. When we lost a generation of gay men to the horror of AIDS, the world missed an entire chapter of fashion, music, art, and style. Oh, you don't believe me? Get out your back issues of Vogue, Architectural Digest, and Rolling Stone. So, given our place as the innovators, protectors, teachers, and keepers of peace, what role do heterosexuals play in society beyond warriors and tractor pull drivers? Procreators? Us too. So, if that's all they have to offer, who needs them? Keeping straight people around just to breed is like keeping that old office clunker that prints those curly faxes. I mean, why bother when you can get a machine that is a printer, plain paper, fax, scanner, and answering machine all in one beautiful package? Heterosexuals, nothing but one-trick ponies. I'm telling you, friends, heterosexuals are a thing of the past, like Britney Spears, Andrew Lloyd Webber, and Ron Reagan Jr. So again, I ask you, do we need them? Of course we do. They're our kids. Besides, if there were no heterosexuals, who would play us on TV?
I'm Emanual Xavier. For all of us at In the Life here at 1 Times Square in New York, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next month.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation. Additional support provided by the Ford Foundation, the Gill Foundation, the Pride Foundation, the Collingwood Foundation, the Rainbow Endowment, Michael A. Lepin, and the annual support of In the Life members like you.